This is not going to be the type of lens review that you're probably used to seeing on YouTube, folks. I'm currently going through the Appalachian Mountains, always lovely, or the Appalachian Mountains, if you want to be a dick about it, with this guy right here. That is Tamron 70-180mm f2.8. That's their fresh new telephoto for Sony full frame and crop sensor mirrorless cameras. Instead of doing the same tired, worn out sort of lens review, you know the ones I'm talking about, where I get to go out and shoot with these beautiful lenses, you don't get to see anything, and then I bring back some pictures and talk about them, all that kind of stuff. We're not going to do that this time. This time around, I'm taking you along with me. We're going to shoot everything gorilla style, not to be confused with animal style, which honestly sounds pretty amazing right about now. Yeah, so we're going to learn about this lens together. We're going to shoot with it in some real world situations, and hopefully it's going to give you a more true, a more honest representation of this lens, maybe something that you think you could use for yourself. I've got, I don't know, about an hour or so of driving to go. Given the circumstances, there aren't really any campgrounds open, so I've already called ahead to this little hotel that I like to stay in whenever I'm through the area, and I have a room booked for the next couple of days while I'm testing out this lens. So if all goes well, I should be seeing you here in about an hour at check-in. Just rolling into Townsend, Tennessee, and out of Wares Valley, and that's no good. We'll talk about that later. But luckily, we're here. Good old docks. I'm gonna check in real fast. Give them a little shout out. One of the favorite places to stay here in Townsend. All right, I'm all checked in. Grab a few things here. Show you what $65 gets you in Townsend. TV though. Welcome to docks. Get a few more things in, then we'll come back and talk. So, I am in, relatively unloaded, and since I think, well, I'm fairly confident that a few of you may not have had the opportunity to stay in some of these smaller mom and pop type of hotels that you can find throughout the country, it would be a good idea to give you a basic run through at some of the things you're likely to expect. First of all, bed. For somebody that sleeps in their car a lot and camps, that's pretty good. You have the ubiquitous coffee maker and coffee products. Nice little TV, clock and microwave. Nice little spot to put my creative necessities. And you know what? They even threw in a free bathroom. No charge for that. The reason I'm showing you all this, guys, is because sometimes I do get asked, how do I travel around? How do I afford all this kind of stuff? Testing these lenses, doing the photography, that kind of thing. Well, more often than not, you can get by with very little. Like I said, this room is $65 a night. I'm here for 2 nights, all in. It's like $150. Now, while relative to what I am used to, being $0 or maybe $8 or $10 a night, that is a lot. But it just goes to show you, you can get away with this stuff very cheap. Anyway, if you have the chance to stay in little hotels like this, I know it doesn't look like much, but I urge you to do that because a lot of these little mom and pop hotels, 95% of the time, they're extremely clean, they're very cheap, and most of the time the people are extremely nice. I'm done talking about the room now. We are going to now discuss the Tamron 70 to 180 millimeter f2.8. I'm going to grab a super quick lukewarm libation, and then we're going to run down on why I hope this lens is going to be one of the great ones. Okay, let's look up some of the pertinent specs for this lens here. Yes, before you ask, this place does have Wi-Fi. What's the Wi-Fi password? Well, believe it or not, it automatically signed me back in from last time, so good deal. So let's just pull up our good buddy Google, go to Tamron's website, and put in this lens, 70 180 millimeter. You think I'm kidding, guys? I took that lens out, or this lens out, for I think a day, shot 2 or 3 pictures with it, but I was really focusing on, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended, that 20 millimeter that I reviewed. Check out that video somewhere up in there. Okay, as I've already said innumerable times, this is the 70 to 180 millimeter f2.8. The full name is the III VXD for Sony full frame mirrorless. The VXD, that is Tamron's new autofocusing system. At least it's new for this lens here. It stands for Voice Coil Extreme Torque Drive. It's a linear motor drive system. That guy right there, maybe you can see it. And apparently this lens has 2 of those. It looks as if it pivots on 2 sets of rails. Anyway, so far the autofocus has seemed to be living up to the hype. It's been very fast, very accurate, at least in those very limited situations where I tested it. But later on this afternoon, we're going to head out, see if we can get some wildlife here at sunset and really put that autofocus to the test. Of course, it is a constant 2.8 aperture from the 70 to 180 millimeter. It's got another insane minimum object distance, relatively anyway, 0.85 meters, so 33.5 inches or so. Get really close to that. So believe it or not, this packs in 19 elements, 14 groups, 67 millimeter filter size, overall length 5.9 inches, 149 millimeters, weight 110 grams, 28.6 ounces, so a little more than a pound and let's see, pound and a half, 8, 4, so yeah, about a pound 12 ounces, so under 2 pounds for that lens. I couldn't math. 9 circular aperture blades. We'll come back to that in just a second, plus the weight and the length of this, because I know a lot of people have been comparing it to that Sony 70 to 200 millimeter f4. They're saying that they might prefer this to that lens for portraits because it's cheaper, weighs less, all that stuff. We'll talk about that later. It's also worth mentioning that this is the 3rd of Tamron's new lenses, I should say faster, higher end lenses for Sony full frame mirrorless. The other 2 are the 17 to 28 millimeter. I've tested that. The other one is the 28 to 75 millimeter. I've actually tested that. So it's kind of cool rounding out the trio, just like I did with those fast primes that I reviewed. It's cool to get finally my hands on all of these new lenses from Tamron. And I usually go on about it. Folks, it's amazing to finally have all these lenses for Sony full frame mirrorless. I started out, I think it was 2013 or 2015. Anyway, right at the beginning, there were no lenses really, and the ones that were available were extremely expensive. I was basically using adapted old vintage lenses with my A7R MK1 for the first year or so. So yeah, it's definitely good to see this level of glass coming out for a relatively inexpensive price. This one, I think the MSRP, don't let me lie to you here. See what it is on Amazon. Let's not kid ourselves, guys. You're gonna get this at the cheapest place. I do the same thing, so Amazon's usually the way to go. Okay, Tamron 70 to 180 millimeter, yada yada yada. Right now, as this is being filmed, not in stock. Maybe not. How much are you? Well, this is embarrassing. I accidentally closed out of the window. Anyway, okay, finally, the going price for this, at the time this was filmed, I think, what's today? May 11th? Something like that? 2020. It's going for just under $1,200 bucks. That's $1,199. Let's look up that Sony and compare some specs as well. That Sony f4 70-200mm, just to get an idea of what this is hypothetically going up against. Let's see. Okay, here we go. That's Sony FE 70-200mm f2.8 Gmaster OSS. This is on B&H, $2,598. So the Tamron, at least just out of the gate, you're looking at about a $1,400 cheaper lens. Same constant f8 aperture. Let's compare the sizes. Okay, again, the Tamron is going to be 5.9 inches long, call it 6 inches long, 28.6 ounces. The Sony FE 70-200 f2.8 GM OSS is going to be 7.87 inches long, so nearly 8 inches long, and weigh in at 3.26 pounds. So the Sony is going to be about a pound heavier and about, 2 inches longer than the Tamron, which is interesting. And I don't know, I hadn't used the Gmaster, so any of you who've used that and this, feel free to chime in. But that's an incredible difference in weight and overall length, and let's call it what it is, in price. So that makes me even more curious to really get this out, test it, and see where we're going to be with that bad boy. That's enough of the tech stuff. Real quick, I'm going to run over the actual appearance of this lens. I've reviewed a ton of Tamron lenses, guys. These are always good looking, in my opinion, especially with the newer mirrorless cameras. I finally updated to an A7R Mark III. It matches perfectly. It has a very welcomed zoom lock on there, and extremely solid, by the way. Like, there's no play in that at all. Unlock it, zooms out. Just go all out here. Zooms out pretty good, not too bad. I have noticed, even as relatively light as this lens happens to be, it's a little nose heavy. I'm not gonna lie to you there. It bounces really far forward, but you know, then again, it has 19 elements in there, so it's weird that it's even remained this light. Personal preference, it does seem a little bit forward heavy to me, at least on this camera. And speaking of that, I'm going to do most of the shooting with A7R Mark III, just so I can take advantage of the in-camera stabilization and the lens corrections there. But I am kind of curious to slap it on my old girl here, the A7R Mark I that I'm filming on, just to see how it performs there. So who knows, you know, if you have an older Sony camera, which I literally, up till recently, that was my main camera, it would be good to know how it's going to perform on those. Okay, you know I've got it turned on now. Just see the autofocus. It's extremely quiet. Man. I have used the autofocus a time or two that one day that I had it out, but I really didn't pay too much attention to it. That's wild. Yeah, so we're gonna have to go out and get to shooting with this. I don't know what time it is. I took my watch off. We're getting close to being the time I probably need to leave to get over here for sunset. I have no idea how it's going to be. Like I said, they just opened up this whole area over the weekend. I'm hoping it's not crazy, but I'm going to drive as far as I can and then get out on foot and see what we can get. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, just like magic, clothes are changed. Let's go out and see what this bad boy can do. Oh yeah, the good thing is, at least for now, the more or less the place is abandoned. Maybe it'll stay that way. So I don't have any food. I just realized that when I left the hotel. So I've stopped off here. Gonna run in there and pick something up. I don't know, a few sticks of butter or something like that. now that we got that food thing handled, we can get down to business. I'm gonna go see what we can find to shoot. Okay, this is one of those times I just happened to see this fly fisherman down here in the water. He's silhouetted. I'm gonna try to run down there, not disturb him, but fire off 1 or 2 pictures. We'll see. So I think we had pretty much lost the light, and I'm trying to be quiet, but this guy's gonna let me take his picture while he's fly fishing. Yeah, it's gonna be really, really good if we get this light silhouette just like that. We'll see. Well, that was fortuitous. We more or less lost the light about the time I got down there to the water, but I'd already fired off 1 or 2 photos, so we'll see how that goes. Just from peeping at them on the back of the camera, crazy sharp, even at f2.8. But anyway, we're going to go a little bit further in, and then later on tonight, we'll take a look at the pictures that we do today. I'm a little excited. Not like weird excited, I'm just excited to see the other pictures. Calm down. Now, as much as I abjectly loathe the phrase chasing light, sometimes I guess you really have to. I've stopped off at this little spot that I've photographed for years, virtually every season. And it actually has some extremely fluid lighting characteristics. Thing is, I'm right here on the highway, and this is where we actually are. So I thought I would just take the opportunity while it was here to attempt to get some long exposure shots, but that does mean getting a little damp. Whew. It's been a while. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but that light coming through right here around those trees, that's what we're going to try to go for. And of course it just disappeared, but we'll see. That's the good thing about having this telephoto. I can just reach out there and get it without having to necessarily go through all this stuff. Not too bad. Now if we can just get out of here without getting a little damp. I absolutely love this spot. Okay, I thought we were done, but I happened to see this little speck of moss-covered bank here, the light coming through. I love that tree, and I thought I would make use of the long reach, so I went ahead and fired off a few to show you the sharpness here. Yeah, okay, now I'm done, for now. So I decided to take a chance and motor on down to Cades Cove. I had originally planned on, I had planned on just coming down here, scouting it out today, seeing how it was going to look. If it was very busy, I was just going to park, walk in for a little while. I think I am actually going to do that in the morning, get up really early, unfortunately, and then come down here, park, and hopefully catch some stuff going on around sunrise, so we'll see. But I have to say that generally, it's nowhere near as busy as I thought it was going to be. We just stopped off really fast. These yellow flowers were just too good to pass up, really. So we'll really get to check out how well this thing renders color, at least hopefully. But we're going to head down here. Generally this time of day, I know this area pretty well. Generally this time of day, the horses, yes, there are horses, they're a little bit down here in this far end of the pasture. Let's hope they're there. Well, the horses are definitely here. Unfortunately, so are other two-legged animals, doing what often two-legged animals do, but you know, whatever. We'll kind of snake around here, see if I can't find one of these guys to talk to me. So I found a group of very calm fellows over here that seem to share my disdain for being sociable. We'll just kind of real easy go over here and see what we can reach with this 180mm. So this gentleman decided to come join me for just a second. Apparently he likes to be scratched behind the ears. And I will point out, folks, these are stable horses. They're riding horses, so they're more or less used to people. And he just came right over here to me. And I'm not going to argue. Thanks, guy. Okay, now we can take some pictures. Look at these Jive turkeys. I had to. Well, I've got such a pristine scene going here. I want to use the camera audio to show you the difference between 70 and 180mm on a full frame sensor. Here is, oh, excuse me, here is 70, and here is 180. Full frame sensor, just so you know. Image stabilization, fantastic, about 5.5 stops worth of image stabilization with that VXD. So far, so good. I'm going to use me, pretty much wanted to chill with the horses to tell you a little bit about this autofocus on this. I just mentioned it in a video I took really fast using this camera to show you the zoom. This VXD autofocus, again, ridiculously quiet, at least so far in practice. But it gives you... Getting a scratch going, buddy? That fence. I don't know, buddy. Don't take it easy on that fence there, guy. Alright, I'm going to leave you to that. But anyway, this has about 5.5 stops of image stabilization. Oh, alright. So it's been really, really easy to get these shots, even without a tripod. Anyway, wait on that car to pass. What I was saying was I didn't bring my tripod down here with me. I just want to be more mobile. I'm telling you, this 5.5 stops of stabilization works out really, really well. I'm digging it. Really helps in video. or even in stills at 180 millimeters. Come on, man. Okay. Still no. Got the money's worth out of that fence. I'm gonna cross on this other side here. If you didn't know, I have a soft spot for horses, ponies, burros like that. I did that Faces of Grayson book a couple years ago. So, you know, kind of can't stop taking pictures of them apparently. These are cool. These are polite ones. Always easier. I guess one or two more pictures won't hurt since I'm here. To document what's called a bear jam here in Cades Cove. I don't know if you can see it. There's a trio of black bears. Way off over there. And there's pull-offs everywhere. But who uses those, right? As often happens, time has managed to extraordinarily get away from me. So I'm doing a little shortcut across the valley, and I'm going to head back in, take a look at these pictures. It's been a good solid first day. Got a good feeling about it. Really, you know, I was going to wait to give you any kind of real opinion on the lens until I got the pictures on the computer instead of just looking at them on the back of the camera. But man, this lens may be as good as everybody says it is. So far, at least. Sharpness at 2.8, at least in the center. At least in the center from what I can see on the LCD screen of my camera. Superb. Like I said, we'll just have to see. We'll get it in tonight. Who knows what we're going to find on the way back in, but I am starving. Yeah, so we're going to head back in. See you here back at the hotel. Apparently I don't know how to end little video clips like this. It's one of those times, 70 millimeters is just not quite wide enough, but it works. So I'm shooting really, actually I've maxed out the aperture. I'm at f/22 to check out that sunspot and or starburst rather. I think we're going to be pretty good. I know I said I was going in, guys, but you know, you run across spots like this and the light's actually dying. You just pretty much have to stop. Home sweet here. Good. Still not many people. Shit. Behold, dear friends, the magically nuanced life of the professional freelance photographer / freelance writer. I'm going to finish destroying these noodles, mix me up a quick whiskey drink, and then we'll take a look at those pictures we made today with the 70 to 180 millimeter. Got a good feeling about it. Hope I'm not wrong, but after we get those onto the computer, we'll be able to really pixel peep a little bit, and I'm hoping it's as good as these noodles. All right.
Since 2011, Carry the Load has been providing active ways for Americans to honor and remember the sacrifices made by the military, veterans, first responders.
So I have uploaded our photos from today into Lightroom Classic CC, and just so we're all on the same page, these are all going to be straight out of camera raw files. If you look over here, you'll see they were made with the 70-180 f2.8 and with the Sony A7R MK3. Now that that's out of the way, there's some interesting stuff going on here, guys. Today was pretty much just getting to know this lens, getting to know the autofocus, how the stabilization works, just the overall nuances of the lens. And then tomorrow we'll try to drill down on a few of these points that we've observed here with these. So without any more gilding of the lily, these are the first three or four that we made there of that person that was fishing. They were good enough to let me sit and take a few photos of them. This one, let me switch over to the develop module here so we can really work with it. This one was f2.8, 1/100th of a second. Zooming in, sharpness, just as we suspected it. Hopefully it was going to be very, very good in the center. These are all handheld. Again, this is 1/100th of a second at 180 millimeters. So that image stabilization really going to work in the camera. Yeah, you can see the little tiny little thread sticking off that vest. Let's look at another one. Something that I did notice here, brighten that up just a little bit. I think this was the one. This is 180 millimeters, 1/100th of a second again, f5.6. Sharpness is brilliant. Again, here in the center, even down here on the, where did we go? Yeah, this grass down here, reasonably sharp, but I can't tell if this is chromatic aberration or is that just a part of the grass. I'm thinking it's chromatic aberration because when I go to lens corrections, apply that profile, apply chromatic aberration, it takes that off considerably. Pretty sure that's chromatic aberration. The reason I'm kind of questioning what it is, because this is f5.6. This was at, where's another one? Okay, this was at f2.8, and generally chromatic aberration gets worse the wider or the more narrow the aperture as you move towards those extremes. And you really don't see any chromatic aberration here at f2.8, whereas with f5.6 we were seeing that blue purple fringing. So I'm not sure what to make of that. We're going to talk some more about that here in just a second with some of these other pictures, so don't worry. So overall, just from these four here, extremely sharp. Very, very honestly relieved to see how sharp that this lens is. I'm going to kind of skip around here. This is where we were on out there in the water. That's that long exposure. That's half a second. I think I have them 1 second. Yeah, 1 second at f22. I'm going to zoom in again. The tripod was quite stable, but the image itself looks just a tad soft. And this is going to lead me to something we're going to talk about here in just a minute, that I think in this lens may be softening up a bit as you really stop down that aperture. This was at f22, which is kind of weird. Of course, at the outer fringes of the larger aperture or the smaller aperture, you're starting to get some aberrations and the flaws of the lens showing up. It's just very odd that seemingly the more narrow the aperture goes with this one, the worse it's getting, at least from what I'm seeing from today. Of course, we always have tomorrow to shoot. Here's one at f4. See what I mean here? Zooming in, and look how sharp that is at f4. You would think it would be a little more soft, given that it's a larger aperture. Let me brighten this one up just a tad too.
Yeah. Insanely good sharpness here. Again, this was on a tripod, shooting at 1/50th of a second. Beautiful depth of field, beautiful bokeh. Yeah. Now next we have those yellow flowers. I'm going to toggle, actually let's do the reference view here. So you can see what the difference is between 70 and 180. This one here at the left, that is 70 millimeters, and this one here to the right is 180 millimeters. But look at this, and I've noticed this in a few of the other pictures. Is that swirl I'm seeing? Is that background swirl kind of Helios-esque that we're seeing here? I hope it is. I'm being led to believe that it actually is from some of the other pictures that I've looked at. Again, this is handheld f2.8. Look how sharp that is. That is crazy. My goodness. You can, let's see, get the navigator on track with us. Look right here. You can see this little tiny square. That's what we're looking at here. And that's how sharp that is. If I move over here to the edge, still plenty sharp. Not seeing any chromatic aberrations here at f2.8. This was at 1/1000th of a second. Yeah, very, very good. This is one of our turkeys. That's about in the center of the frame here. f2.8, 1/250th of a second. I've got a few better turkey pictures here, but let me blow your mind for just a second. Here we have our little buddy horse. This is again at f2.8, 1/200th of a second, and I caught him just right with no movement. Look how sharp that is. I keep using the word insane. Well, it's because it's insane. The capability of this lens so far, anyway. Like I said, I think it has a few quirks that we're going to kind of nitpick and figure out exactly what's going on. But these pictures, honestly, are already speaking for themselves. Again, we're at 180 millimeters f2.8. Look at this. It's swirly. I'm telling you, I think this has some background swirl bokeh when you really zoom in to that maximum 180 millimeters. Sharpness, just beautiful. Can't get over that little bit of swirl. Look at that. That's amazing. That's going to be just a amazing portrait lens if that's what you're getting this lens for. Back to our turkey here. Extremely inquisitive look on his or her face. Yeah, wonder what I'm doing here. f2.8 again, 1/3200th of a second. Really froze that motion. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're seeing a pattern here, guys. So far, extremely sharp throughout the frame. I think we can all agree on that. We're seeing some swirly bokeh. I don't think that's just me. We saw it in more than one photo. And oddly enough, it seems the wider your aperture goes, the better overall image quality that we are seeing. The very last few pictures in this group that we took today, I'll show you what I mean there. Yeah, he really didn't know what was going on. Okay, beautiful. Oh yeah, this girl, she decided to pose for me real quick. I mentioned my book, last book earlier, kind of brings back memories from Grayson. Hello. That was at 1/8000th of a second. The light was really bright. f2.8. These were, yeah, the bears I mentioned when I saw that bear jam. This is something I want to talk about with the autofocus. Pay attention to these this grouping of trees right here. They really gave the autofocus a hard time. I was using the center focus point. I then switched to the movable spot, where it did focus quite sharp. We're at f2.8 here again, but let me brighten some of these up. That's the turkey again. We were really underexposed here. So yeah, it just there's one that came close. Yeah, so those, which is understandable, those trees, they're all at different distances, so I think the autofocus was really having a tough time there. But not something that I would just really fret about. And let me go back up here since I saw that turkey, brighten that up, just to show you once again, bathe in the sharpness of this lens. Turkeys do have ears, by the way. And fun fact, Benjamin Franklin, yes, that Benjamin Franklin, wanted the turkey to be America's national bird. The more you know. You see the individual hairs on the back of the neck, the feathers. Just beautiful, beautiful lens so far. We're kind of getting towards the end of the shoot. We're at F8. I think this might have been, I think the wind may have been blowing here, or this might have been just me. Yeah, I think that's just me. That was my fault, guys. Just off focus there. Okay, so these are the ones we made at the very end of the day here. I don't know what to say. These are the ones that I had opened up, closed down the aperture so we could really try to get that starburst going in the sun, and we did. Yeah, look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about with possibly, the jury is still out on it till I work with it a little bit more. But I'm thinking the smaller the aperture you're shooting, so the larger the f number. Right now we've maxed out, or I guess technically minimized the aperture. This is the smallest aperture this lens is capable of, f22. It's gorgeous, it's still sharp, but you can see nothing is just tack sharp. It's a little bit soft, but I guess the good thing about it is like it's a little soft throughout the frame. So that's I don't know if that's a good point or a bad point. Overall though, beautiful color here. I mean, look at that. We were talking about testing out the coatings. Sure, there's a little bit of flare here going on, but it's extremely minimal. We were shooting directly into the sun. This is at f22 again. Beautiful golden colors here, literally at the golden hour. Yeah, that's pretty good. Really like this one. Really like this one. This is at f14. You can see what I mean about the sharpness. Now that we've opened that aperture up a little bit, much sharper. Kind of wild, right? So that's good news if you shoot at really wide apertures for portraits, that kind of thing, or low light. Maybe not so good news if you do a lot of landscapes, if you're really shooting at those narrow apertures to get everything in focus. I just don't know. We're going to test this out some more with that tomorrow. And now that I'm thinking about it, talking about these little flaws, let me go back to this Fisher. There we go. This lens, the 70-180, does have a little bit of pin cushion distortion. That's when the picture more or less bends in at the center. I figured this out. You really just can't tell it by looking at it here. But if you go to the lens corrections again, and just so you know, Adobe Lightroom does already have a profile for this lens, the 70-180. As soon as you click that profile correction, you can see that center really expand out. Personally, I like these better with that little bit of pin cushion distortion. And actually, if you shoot a lot of portraits, especially a lot of headshot type portraits, having a little bit of pin cushion distortion on these telephotos actually helps your subject out because it makes them more slim. It slims down your face because it actually is bending the photo in the middle. So could be a plus there if you do a lot of portraits or planning to do a lot of portraits with the 70-180mm f2.8. So definitely a good first day. What I've learned here, this lens has incredible sharpness, possibly getting a little softer as you stop down the aperture. Again, still kind of up in the air about that chromatic aberration. I just don't know. This is literally the only picture that I've observed that in. And look, folks, this is how tight we are in that right here. Look at the navigator right there in the corner. I just don't know. From a practical standpoint, I'm for sure that's not going to be an issue. There's no issues with vignetting, that pin cushion distortion. Like I said, that could be a good point. Autofocus, absolutely outstanding. In most cases, the lens performed beautifully there. In a few cases, I think it might have been user error on my part. So tomorrow we're going to go back out really early, probably tomorrow, go back to Case Cove, shoot around again. We're going to have a little bit closer look at some of these areas we've identified today. So hopefully we can have a final verdict coming up after we're done shooting tomorrow. So I'm going to do my best to get some sleep, and we'll see you bright and early, but I can't guarantee I'll be overly enthusiastic.
Woke up early this morning, saw it was really overcast, and then just went back to sleep for about another hour or so. So we're a little bit later getting in, going back to the same area as we were yesterday, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I don't think there's going to be any big dramatic sky this morning. So today we're going to test out that hypothesis that we were working on last night about whether or not the sharpness of that 70-180 actually might be diminishing considerably the smaller the aperture. So I'm going to do a few shots, maybe half stop, full stop of a static subject, and see if that may be the case with the sharpness. We're going to test out a few other things with the video capabilities, namely the focus breathing, and then the focus breathing too for anybody that does focus stacking or something in your landscapes, or for any other reason for that matter. Because a few of these lenses I've got lately, a lot of them have some fairly obvious focus breathing, which we'll talk more about that when we're actually doing it. So anyway, long story long, we're going to go in, test out some of the things that we observed yesterday, and hopefully get a verdict on this. Yeah, still can't end videos. So I decided to go ahead and just park and strike out on foot, but I don't think the blue Crocs at Power are going to cut it. All right, so just over this hill, there's a little tiny, so just over this little rise here, there's a pretty big turkey over there. You can probably hear him gobble. There's also 3 or 4 deer that have not saw me yet. I'm going to lose the tripod, lose the pack, and see if I can't ease up on them close enough to get some close-ups with the 180 focal length. Yeah, we'll see. Been making use of that flexible spot autofocus today. Ran into that problem yesterday with the Bear. This has really improved the performance of that autofocus. Yeah. I've already squeezed off a couple of shots. I'm still fairly far away from these guys. I don't know, maybe 40, 45 yards or so. I'm gonna see if I can get a little bit closer. Maybe loop up around this tree. We'll see. Gotta stop saying we'll see. You can probably see that turkey way off in the distance back there. Thought this might be a good time to talk about that focus breathing. I mentioned a little bit earlier this morning. Focus breathing is just when you're focusing with a lens and without physically zooming, the lens appears to be zooming in and out just by the optical properties of the focus. The 70-180 has virtually no focus breathing. See if I can show it to you where you can see it. I've got us in manual focus here on these flowers, and I'm just going to zoom, focus, and you can see it doesn't appear to be affecting the zoom at all. Virtually no focus breathing here. That's great for stitching together focus stacks, even panoramics. And if you're filming in autofocus, it doesn't cause that weird wonky zoom effect. Here's an example of a lens that has a fair amount of focus breathing. So yeah, none of that here, which is a good thing. So I'm here at one of the old churches in Cades Cove, and this one has this nice texture on the side. So I think this is where we're going to test out the sharpness at the different stops. So what I've got set up here, I'm at 70 millimeters, so zoomed all the way out, and I've got the little seam here in the siding more or less centered in the frame. I'm on manual focus. I'm going to zoom in, be absolutely sure that at least on the LCD I'm as sharp as I can possibly get. So we're manual focusing. Looks pretty sharp to me. And what I'm going to do is fire off an exposure at half stops. So I'm going to be going f2.8, f4, f5.6, f8, so on and so on, all the way up to f22. And then I'm going to move back and zoom all the way into 180 on that same spot. Do the same thing again. I'm probably going to shoot everything at ISO 100, and just since I've got the tripod and everything set up, we should be really steady. I'll just adjust the exposure, the shutter time, to compensate for the decrease in aperture. So what else? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put it on a 2-second timer, and probably electronic shutter too. Actually, no electronic shutter, because most of the time you'll be using the physical shutter. So I'm gonna make this as much real world as possible. And speaking of that, I'm going to leave the steady shot, in-camera steady shot on, because I think if you're out shooting, that's probably going to be turned on for you too. So let's do this. I've just finished up shooting the round at 70 millimeters, and it turns out I really didn't have to adjust much at all, but this is still the same little center spot we were aiming at earlier. I have already adjusted focus. Just zoom in to show you here. I'd call that fairly sharp to me. And now, just so we keep it completely constant, I'm going to cycle back down to f2.8. Bring that exposure back, keep an eye on the histogram there. Try to keep these as constant as possible. I'm going to fire this off. There's f2.8. f4. Alright. Again, you get the idea. We'll look at these tonight. Just to give you an idea of what people are seeing, I'm a dude set up here with a camera taking pictures of the wall. But somebody's got to be that guy. We got a nice little crew going here. Coming up in the back. Here she goes. Not a care in the world. I'm about a half a mile from the vehicle, give or take. I decided to find a nice little quiet spot, little side trail here off that main road, to give a tentative summation of what we found out today with the Tamron 70-180 f2.8. The first thing we found out, that autofocus issue that we had yesterday with the bears, that is more or less, I'm going to put that on me. The trees, there were 3 little trees at varying distances between me and the subject, and that really threw off the center weighted autofocus. Put it on flexible spot or movable spot where you can actually, it's a smaller autofocus metering spot, but you can move it around on your subject. And I haven't had a single issue with autofocus all day. I was shooting those deer, moving around, shooting some horses this morning, and it was spot on. It was fine. So I'm going to check that autofocus off the list of issues that we experienced. I also have tested out the focus breathing. You saw that a little bit earlier. Virtually no focus breathing on this thing. Compared to some lenses you run into, that can be a big issue, especially if you're using them for video, or if you do a lot of focus stacking. Anytime that the focus is changing, it's going to make it look like it's zooming, so you don't have to worry about this. Worry about that with this lens. Probably very, very good for video when you factor in that super, super quiet and quick autofocus. Something that we're going to have to wait till we get back to the hotel to figure out. I did the step shots, the aperture steps, to see if we can find out if the sharpness is actually decreasing or where the sweet spot is for the aperture and sharpness on this lens. I shot at 70mm against that church wall from f2.8 and half stops all the way up to f22, which is the minimum aperture on this lens, and then zoomed all the way in to 180mm, did those step shots again, and hopefully that's going to tell us if what we were seeing last time was just a figment of my imagination and my shooting. I don't know, but seeing how that was a very, very static test. It was on a tripod, good and heavy, good and solid, put it on a 2-second timer. If we see any diminishment in sharpness, I'm going to chalk that up to some kind of interaction between that and the aperture. So at least we'll know there. But I guess I've rested long enough. I guess I'll make it back to the vehicle, go in, and probably just go ahead and look at these. I can already tell I'm not going to be able to wait till tonight. I've rediscovered another one of my favorite spots here. I stumbled on this place years ago now. I know 4 or 5 years ago I was testing some ND filters for breakthrough photography. Found this place, actually literally this exact spot. So I'm taking the opportunity to come and shoot it again with a 70-180mm. That's on the A7R III. This is my old girl, my A7R MK1. Been everywhere with me. This is what I was shooting here last time with, so I thought it was fitting to switch out the 70-180, put it on the A7R, shoot the exact same scene, and just compare the two later. Cool little experiment. Just a quick walk around of the 70-180 on the A7R MK1, just because, and since I know a lot of folks still use these cameras. Like I said, I was using this camera as my main body up till, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago maybe. I thought it would be good to see just how tiny that camera looks compared to this lens. Kind of wild. Another bear jam. People are wonderful.
And boom, we're back here at the hotel, back in Lightroom. I've got all these pictures offloaded. I've ran through them real quick. Very interesting results here, guys. If you remember today, we're going to be testing out whether or not we were right about the sharpness getting a little soft as we move up into some smaller apertures. We've tested that out. We've tested out the autofocus again today, which worked beautifully. I switched everything to the flexible spot or the movable spot, and that took care of the autofocus issues we experienced with those bears yesterday. So enough of that. Let's get in here. All these pictures here we made today, The big thing is at the end of this video, I'm going to post or put up like quite a few of the images that I made here, the test images. So don't think I'm skimping you on those. Those are going to be at the end of the video. But really what we're going to focus on today, why not? Let's zoom into this just a little bit. Yeah, check out that sharpness. Anyway. Okay, let's go ahead and scroll all the way over to those super interesting pictures we took of the wall. This was our sharpness test. It's where I took the images at 70 millimeters. We made a set at 70 millimeters. We made a set at 180 millimeters. They're all separated by half stops. And hopefully this is going to tell us whether or not we have a sharpness degradation as we get into smaller apertures. I don't know. It's been kind of weird. But these are about as close to completely even. Only thing that was changing was the aperture. I had the camera set up on the tripod. We're at 100 ISO. I just changed the shutter time to compensate for the aperture. 2-second shutter release. So we shouldn't have any shake is what we're really getting into talking about here. So I'm going to throw up the reference view. Let's see, this is our 70 millimeter f2.8, and this would be our 4. Okay, let's put the 2.8 there. There we go. So I'm going to zoom these in, same little spot here, and that is a massive jump in sharpness, if I can say so myself, from f2.8 to f4. It's not overly soft at f2.8. Plus, that's a pretty shallow depth of field. That may have something to do with it. So there is f2.8 on the left, f4 on the right. I'm just going to cycle through those. So there is f5.6 here at the right. Let's get rid of this stuff. Make it a little bit easier for you to see. So f2.8 is going to stay here on the left. We have now f5.6. There's f8. f11. f16. And now we have f22. Which really, that looks plenty sharp. That's kind of weird. Let me let's compare that to f16. A little bit softer at f22, which that's really to be expected. Alright. But maybe there's just something about those images that we made yesterday. I don't know. There was just a dramatic change in sharpness. And now we have f16 on the left, f11 on the right, and you can see that f11 is going to be a little sharper. Yeah. There's f8. f8 generally 5.6 or f8. f5.6 or f8 usually a sweet spot for a lot of lenses. That's looking like it's going to be the case here, but then again, yeah, 5.6 is killer sharp there. I don't know. I think f4 right now may be our sweet spot at 70 millimeters. Let's switch to the 180 millimeter zoom. So there's 180 millimeter f2.8 on the right, and now we have 180 millimeter f4 here on the the f2.8 is on the right, on the left. You want to say right. f2.8 180 millimeters right here on the left, 180 millimeter f4 here on the right. Okay, there we go. So again, we're just going to have a really shallow depth of field here based on the zoom and the aperture with f2.8, but still I believe the f4 is marginally sharper. Moving over to f5.6. Much sharper. There's f8. Not a lot of difference, I don't believe. f11 is really, really sharp. f16, and then we have f22. Softening up just a little bit from f16, I believe. Or maybe they're about the same. We have f11 here on the left. Yeah, f11 is much sharper than 22. Then I'm assuming f8 is going to be even sharper than 11. I don't know. I think f11 might end up being the sweet spot at 180 millimeters, at least for this one. f2.8 on the left, f4 on the right. Yeah, maybe f4 at 170. So I think we're our 180. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure if this gives us any more answers. If anything, I would say that with this 70 to 180 millimeter, as with a lot of lenses, as you move from the widest aperture to the smallest aperture, those two polarized ends of the spectrum is where you're going to have the least sharpness. And then somewhere, the sweet spot, as we call it, is usually going to be somewhere in the middle of that. In our cases, we're looking like we're going to be somewhere from f4 to f11, which is very broad for a lens like this. And again, 2.8 is still extremely sharp. Vignetting, we can look at that here too. You know what, I'm not even going to look at that anymore because, you know, I've talked about it in other reviews. I usually add vignetting into my images anyway, so I think it's really a non-issue. Yeah. So I guess cautiously we'll say that we were right, that those images were getting softer as we closed down that aperture, but maybe not to the extent that we originally thought. So all good news. Well, quick picture of one of those deer. Switch back to loop view just while we're here. I'm going to show you the images that we took. I told you I compared my old A7R MK1 to my A7R MK3. And I'll tell you what, let's just see if you can tell the difference. Some of you will probably spot it right off the bat. Came very close. All the settings were the same. 1.3 seconds at f22 at ISO 50. And I was really close on the millimeters. I think I bumped the zoom a little bit, but I refocused. So yeah, which one of these images do you think is the A7R MK1? Which one of these images do you think is the A7R MK3? If you're very astute, you probably already know. But I have to say, the old girl, this lens functions just dandy with her too. You can tell there's a difference between one and the other, and just from the white balance, I'll tell you, I had them both set on shade, if I'm not mistaken. This one over here just a little bit warmer, at least to my eyes, than the one on the left. But anyway, I'll include these at the end of the video too, with those other test pictures, and I'll be sure to label both of them. So, very good day, guys. I'm heading home in the morning. I may possibly get some pictures of this neon sign out here tonight. If so, I'll throw those in there too. But look for the full summation of all this after I get home. I don't know, probably the day after tomorrow. I'll get out in the studio, really put all this together, and get a final verdict on this very, very capable Tamron 70 to 180mm f2.8 that I've been fortunate enough to test out. So, see you then.
All right, Wednesday morning, rolling out of docks. Gonna head down here, try to grab me a nice gigantic cup of coffee from Artistic Bean, some of the best coffee I think in the world, and then head back west. Hey folks, back here in my home studio in West Tennessee, begrudgingly. Just wanted to give a quick summation of what we've learned on the Tamron 70-180 f2.8. This guy right here. Come on. All right, hang on. All right, the Tamron 70-180. Come on. There it is. The Tamron 70-180 f2.8 Di3 VXD. If you are a portrait shooter, you're looking for this lens, I would highly recommend it just because of the sharpness of it, wide open, that foreground subject and then background separation. You're gonna love that. Also, weirdly enough, if I'm right about it, that unexpected swirly bokeh, you're gonna love that too. It's very reminiscent of the Helios 44-2s. I shoot that a lot. The Zeiss Jennas, those old vintage film lenses, that very signature creamy swirl like bokeh. You'll love that for portraits. If you're getting this just for a general walk around lens, very good for that too, for all the same reasons: the sharpness, the speed. It may be a little bit heavy on you, at least in the balance. This thing balances very far forward, not overly so. I walked for over 7 miles or so with this lens, no trouble at all. One thing I haven't really mentioned is the weather sealing of it. You're gonna love the weather sealing. I was out, it rained on me just a little bit. I think you can see that in some of the videos. Of course, no trouble there. I love Tamron's weather sealing on their lenses. In my opinion, it's some of the best out there. So I don't think you're gonna have to worry about dust, moisture, anything like that getting into your camera. Thirdly, if you want this for a dedicated landscape lens, even with our test on the sharpness and the aperture, how that related to it, I think the verdict is still out on that. I saw where the super small apertures like f22, which is what this lens goes up to, inexplicably soft at times, and then sometimes, like apparently when we're shooting that church wall, it seemed pretty sharp. So there, I don't know. Overall though, I don't think the sharpness is anything you have to worry about with this lens at all. So all this to say, guys, I know this video is running well over an hour, but I really enjoy doing this new format. Let me know if you like seeing the behind the scenes, in front of the scenes type video, to where it's a real world kind of review of these lenses. I think I prefer this more than the kind of videos that I mentioned at the beginning of this one, where I just, you know, humdrum, go out, shoot with all this kind of stuff. I know you're tired of that. So anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this admittedly unorthodox video. At the end of this, I'm going to scroll through some more of those pictures that I've already posted in this video to let you have a chance to really examine the test shots from the 70-180. So yeah, until next time, of course I can't...
Sorry, I'm not sure.
So until next time, guys, thanks a lot for joining me, and I still can't end these videos.